Welcome back, everybody, to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brooke Olsen. My guest this week is Michelle Mitchell. Welcome
Hello,
back,
thanks, Brooke.
Michelle.
It's been a minute.
It's been more than a minute. I really appreciate you coming in. The subject for this today was your idea, and I just absolutely loved it because we're in an age, we're in a time where people are really leaning on technology and AI in particular. And the title for this podcast is AI as a tool is grossly incomplete. And you and I were just talking before we started here about how people are using this and leaning on it as a substitute for writing emails, as a substitute for filling out documents, as a substitute for dealing with the high level of activation that happens for them in communicating with their co-parent. I mean, there's just so much that's getting missed here. And I don't know what the thought process is, and I'd like to really get your hit on this notion that so many people that we're talking to think that they can just go in and have a chatbot give them the answers.
I think one, it's a sign of the times, right? People are looking for they want everything immediate, right? Because of that activation. So, for instance, let's say you get an email from your co-parent and you're feeling really dysregulated over whatever you read. We automatically want to just push that away, right? All of those bad feelings away. And so if you can just turn to a chat bot really quickly, you're going to get an instant response. And I think people are turning to it for that. I think they've just started integrating it into all parts of their lives, but what they're not realizing is that it's not a tool for all things. And you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you're sitting there, you're like, oh, this is a great response. I couldn't have typed that myself. I'm going to fire that off right now. But they're not noticing what's going on inside of their body. And then they're coming to us and saying, I don't understand why things aren't changing. I don't understand why I still feel so activated or anxious or constantly worrying about what's going to happen next. What's the next email going to say?
So when I think about the evolution of dealing with high conflict um, scenarios, in the couple of decades or so that I've been doing this, there's an information flow that people naturally want. They don't know what they don't know, to your point. And they're looking for information. We're all looking for information. That's why people are listening to this podcast, to try to get to understand how to do this, because we want to do it on our own for numbers of reasons. One, when we employ people to help us with this stuff, there's a cost to it, whether it's working with us or working with an attorney or whoever that is in the process. And there's a shortcut that comes in, I think, to try to grab that information, say, I can read a book, I can get the information, I can do this myself. And when I think about getting information out of ChatGPT or wherever you're pulling your AI from, it's strictly information that's been gathered from all sorts of places. It's like going into a library and pulling a book.
Scanning the books.
Right. And I use AI, you use AI, but I use it in that realm of gathering information. But when I start to filter through the information that I'm getting from it, I'm also noticing that it's missing a ton of stuff. It's got a great overview. It's got some really good structure in there, but it misses the tone of what an individual wants to put out. And when I see something coming in to an email box and I read an email and yeah, that's AI stuff that's just spitting stuff out. It doesn't have the tone of a human being behind it. And like it or not, dealing with a high conflict co-parent is relational. And I kind of look back to the fad, and I still hear it, of this notion of gray rock. And it feels similar in that we're cutting off the relational piece of that. And the relational piece doesn't have to be relationship with other, but it has to be relationship with self, in that this is what is really going on for me, and I don't have to respond to that, but I have to process the non-response, or I've got to understand that ChatGPT just gave me a response
that I
to what
pulled
you're
from somewhere
saying,
else. Right.
but do I have to respond to that? I haven't processed that piece. And there are so many different opinions out there, whether you're looking at it from a legal standpoint or a coaching standpoint or a therapeutic standpoint, where these responses have a different level of disengagement to it or engagement with it. Does that make sense?
Right. I like how you said engagement with it. And it reminds me of how when we teach our class, sometimes we say yes is a disengagement, sometimes no is a disengagement, and it's nuanced. Right. And so I think, to your point, parents want a how to. If this, then that. If I get this request, I can look at my flow chart and it'll tell me what to do. And real life isn't like that, right? Every family situation is nuanced. Every co-parenting relationship is nuanced. What I tell one client, if I was presented with the same exact situation from another client, the answer might be completely different, depending on that family's dynamics, the ages of the kids, all of it.
And chat doesn't get the nuance. It doesn't have the relationship of what's happening in the dynamics. And it doesn't take into an account that if a person is stimulated by a phone call, an email, a service, or whatever that is, that there's a process that absolutely has to happen with that stimulation for that person to get through this. And this is the bigger picture of it, because this isn't this is not a point, a moment in time. This is a broad picture that has to have carry to it. And if I just go here and I freeze and I go, I got a chat thing and I got that in there, when I get hit by the next one, I may not be able to hit that. I may not have that at my fingertips, and I may get flooded and do things that I shouldn't do, or say
Not
things I
only
shouldn't say.
that, but it feels more like fixing the symptom and not the cause, right? We talk a lot about nervous system regulation. And if I'm getting a message or a response from chat, I might feel like, dodged a bullet that time, got the message out, everything is good. But you talked about it being relational. It's relational and it's evolutional. I think about when I first started working with you, almost 15 years ago. And I feel like I learned a lot and I grew exponentially in a pretty short period of time. And I look back to who I was and where I was there. You know what I mean? Like, I knew nothing. I thought I knew a lot, but this stuff takes time. You have to learn how to unpack yourself to know how your nervous system works. And there's no computer that's going to give you that response. And so, yes, chat may give you that response each time you go there, and it'll learn your tone, your voice, that kind of stuff. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't stop the activation chaos cycle. You're still going to get activated every single time because you haven't figured out how your own individual nervous system works.
And I might even take that a step further, Michelle.
I
Um,
hope you do.
I think that no matter what, you're going to get activated.
Yes.
I think the gold is when you learn how to navigate the activation
Yes, that is true.
and you shorten its life cycle.
Right. It doesn't last, it doesn't hang around all day, and you're not thinking about what's coming next. It's okay, which is why we tell people, pick a day and time to check your messages where you're not walking into a meeting. You're not picking up your kids because you know that there's going to be a window where you're activated, right? And that window gets shorter as you do the work that we're talking about, as you do the work that we work on with our clients every day.
So let's come back to relationship for a second. Let's come back to the relational component that we were just talking about. Because when we are in this high conflict piece, we are doing more than just responding or not responding. We are modeling response, and we're not robots. Our children aren't robots. And the other parent is not a robot. And we have to take into consideration all of those aspects as we're functioning and moving through these conflicted moments with the other parent. And we talk all the time about the way that we are processing with our kids, that we are
Regulating?
regulating with our kids. And this is part of that. When we are putting that forward and we're dysregulated, our kids are still dysregulated. When we put that forward in a dysregulated state, even if it is blank, there is a message that's energetically out there to the other parent that you're dysregulated or that they're dysregulated. And we're not taking into consideration how that's going to land. And that's the nuance in the disengagement conversation that we always have. It doesn't happen on a plain sheet of paper. It happens 4 or 5 dimensionally. It's got space time, and it's got the energetics of how this is being carried, and we're trying to disengage from it. But we're not disconnected from it.
Right?
Does that make sense?
Yes. And when you're getting information from a chat bot, you're disconnected from it. Versus for having a conversation about it, there's going to be layers that are, layers that we didn't know existed, right? In processing that we're going to unpack. Or as you always say, a through thread, right? To start to see these patterns of how we react, patterns that are keeping us stuck, keeping us engaged in the conflict, patterns that are causing us to show up with our kids so that they feel that it's their responsibility to regulate mommy or daddy, to take care of our emotions, because we haven't worked it out.
The technology is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for an information fire hose, it's awesome, right? But it doesn't have the knowledge. This is a nuance in here, okay? It's got this massive amount of information, okay? But it doesn't have the knowledge of the moment. It doesn't have the knowledge of the situation. It doesn't have situational awareness to it.
Mm, right.
And it doesn't have the awareness of a regional piece, how the region judges work. It doesn't have the nuance of attorneys that have varying levels of experience in their field. It doesn't have. It's dry information.
Right. Exactly. And I see this, I'll talk to a client and ask about their attorney, and I can tell they're a little wish-washy, right? And then it's like, oh, it comes out, oh, you're not actually working with an attorney. You're just using ChatGPT and representing yourself, and you don't know how you don't understand what just happened in court.
Right. Right. And if people are coming to us, we're not attorneys. Well, you are, but you're not a family law attorney, right?
Right. I'm not practicing right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see things through a different portal. We see things through what we've been through, how we've processed it over decades of time now, the way that the physiology and the psychology works within the dynamic. And when we're sitting with a client, we're pulling all of this information in on all of these different levels and processing it, co-processing it with our client with this back and forth. There's never, ever with me, and I know the same is true with you, a direct line to this is just how we do it. Even when we talk about disengagement and the etiology that has happened over the years with that, it's evolving. And how that disengagement takes place with an individual is specific to that individual. We've talked about this before in another podcast that, disengagement isn't gray rock. They're very different pieces. And one has meat to it, and the other is just a blank.
Blank that often creates more chaos.
Right. Because there's been no process in it.
Right.
So how do you think your clients, when they jump into using chat for their responses or chat to get information, what level of trust do you think that they have in that process, or that they're leaning on that? I guess another way to ask that question is, do they really believe that that is a valid tool to use?
I think so. Otherwise, they would be in our ghostwriting program. And, I mean, I think that, in fact, because I'm teaching a class right now, and I think that a lot of people still think that it's benefiting them to use AI. The great thing about the class is that, as you know, we spend a lot of time talking about everything that we're unpacking right now. And so they're starting to see that it's nuanced. It's not just a if this, then that. Um, I have a client actually who I tried to come on and talk with us, but you know how that is in high conflict. Nobody wants to reveal themselves, right? He's been with us for over a year, and really intelligent guy. And um, after he had been working with us for a couple of months, he was sort of mind blown because he had been using Chat GBT, and we actually hear this all the time, and they didn't realize what a disservice they were doing to themselves because they were staying stuck, or they were having to check into the messages directly and get that nervous system activation rather than working with us to summarize the messages to them. So there's always going to be people who kind of put their blinders on. I do think that there might be a correction at some point. This is all still very new, very fun. It's very fun to use AI for a lot of things.
Kick.
What's that?
It's a kick. I enjoy it.
It's a kick. Yeah, no, it's fun. A lot of fun with AI, but not when you're messing around with something as serious as high conflict co-parenting, nervous system dysregulation, kids feeling in the middle. So I do think that there will be a correction at some point after, the cycle goes through court.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I just want our listeners to think about what I'm about to say and just kind of take a minute and check in, because as we're talking and I'm relating to my years of having clients and working with this, and what I continually hear from new clients coming in and people that I talk to, they just want the pain to stop. I just want the pain to stop. And I think that using AI, the notion of using AI is I don't have to have an interpersonal relationship with anybody in this. I can wall myself off. I don't have to feel what's going on. I can just be here and get the information out and push it out and not have to feel the pain. And the comment is I just want this to stop. I just want this to be over. And I think what's happening with the use of AI is it is jumping over that. And as painful as this process is, and I know that you know this, and I know this deeply within my being, is this is going to sound just really weird and it's going to hit people wrong, but I'm going to say it. This is a gold mine. This time in your life is transformational on so many levels if you're willing to do the work that's in this and to engage in the process of not just what I'm in, but why am I in it, and how did I get here, and what is keeping me stuck in this, and how do I move through this. And it isn't an intellectual journey. It's got some intellect in it, but it's not an intellectual journey. It is a personal journey that requires the presence of every aspect that you can bring into it, and that includes the pain. That's the portal. And that's where your resilience comes from. That's where you model for your children what fortitude is and what resilience looks like.
Right.
And that they can see that you can take a hit and you can still come back and be present. And that teaches them that they can take a hit and come back and be present because you've shown them how it works. And I'll take that to another place here. And I know that you and I have talked about this as well, Michelle, is that we can't shield our kids from all of this stuff. It is impossible to do it. And with as hard as it is for them, you're setting a template for them to be able to do this into the future. You're literally changing the epigenetic response for them into their adulthood. And that doesn't happen by eliminating the process.
Yeah, I love the gold mine analogy. And something that you just said, um, about not being able to protect them. What was I going to say? Um, oh, I lost it. But there's something that I was going to say when something that I always tell my clients. Oh, goodness. I lost it. It'll come to me. Um, but it is gold because, I mean, I share this story all the time about how I will never forget sitting in your class back in the day when it was in person, way before COVID. And it was like the light bulb just went off that there was a gold mine, right? That it's like, okay, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. You've got door number one or door number two. Door number one is going to give you lots of growth and take you in places you never imagined. And door number two might put a band-aid on it. You get through court, show the court that, you're doing a great job, whatever, but that's it. That's where it stops. There's no further growth. And you and I both teach this class, and, we see all kinds of personalities in there. And sometimes every once in a while, there's someone in there who's resistant to that growth. But that doesn't mean that they're always going to be resistant to the growth. So, yeah, it's a gold
AI,
mine.
AI can't teach that. And it can't help you to to get to get on the other side of this, because that's the goal, isn't it? And this is only going to end for a client when this ends for a client. It's not going to end a moment before that. And to be able to just be in the flow of, oh, I did that better. Oh, and to get reflection back of where it got missed, because that that changes not just what you're doing with your co-parent. It changes what you do with absolutely every
Everything.
relationship in your life, with your children, with your teachers, with your friends, with people that you just meet casually, how you deal with conflict that's outside of this, because
And
you have
perspective taking. Because if you can see the other person's perspective, you let go of, the animosity, the anger. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but if you can see their perspective and you're modeling. So I remembered what my thought was. To your point about modeling, I have clients who say all the time, yeah, but my co-parent is so high conflict that they're awful to the kids too. Well, all the more reason to model to your kids how to navigate these high conflict situations, because even, they're going to grow up and their parents going to be in their life for the rest of their lives, right? Your co-parenting will largely end at some point when the kids become adults, but they will have to continue to learn how to navigate that very high conflict personality for the rest of their lives.
and this is the long game. Putting a band-aid on a bullet wound, you're still going to bleed out.
Right.
But this this is the ability to, let me, when we're in trauma, when we are in that fight, flight, freeze moment of whatever's going on, whatever is activated us, our perspective becomes focused on a point, and we lose sight of everything else. There's no periphery. And when a client learns how to settle their nervous system and they've got the information now, and they've processed the information in a way that is relational, that they can feel the difference in the tone and the difference in the activation sequence and the difference in how their internal response is, then we're in Doppler radar. All points are available and all the information is there. And now the threat has a different perspective to it. And the solutions are more diverse.
Right. That's the zooming out, right? Or the orientation.
Well, it's the orientation, and I think it's a simultaneous zooming out and zooming in. It's um, it's a metacognitive state of being able to witness what's happening here, but also simultaneously witnessing what's happening out here. We're
Right.
outside and above, and we're being able to feel internal, but also be external.
Right. And internal is not focusing on the self, but observing the self.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that is settling. That is an advanced state of consciousness. And that's what you do. That's what I do in trying to teach our clients that if they get to a point where they can witness that, then they've got the ability to move outside of that and do something different. They're not they're connected to it, but they're not it. How do we convince people to do this work? This is one of the dilemmas of my lifetime, because I've watched the analytics for the people that reach out to us. I've looked at the analytics on this podcast. I know that there's millions of downloads and people that have been watching this stuff. And yet there's a trickle. And everybody, when I started this 24 years ago, this space was this small. There was a handful of us that were really learning. We were in the trenches figuring this stuff out. And now there is a plethora of people out there that are doing this, that haven't completed their journey. I don't know that the journey's ever complete, but people are looking at, okay, who's got the answer? Who's got the answer? Who's got the answer? Who's got the answer? And it's hard to choose from.
For sure.
And the only thing that I have to say to people that are out there looking, that are listening to this, is you've got to trust your gut. You've got to get out of your head and go, okay, I'm listening to this person on Instagram. I'm reading this stuff on their Facebook. I'm reading their blogs or whatever's out there. And it resonates with me. But because it resonates, does that mean that they're in the same place that you're in and they haven't fully processed that piece out yet?
I was just going to say, a decade ago, the people who would resonate with me were the people who would have colluded with me. So you have to be mindful of, why are they resonating with you? And I think if what they're talking about is one dimensional, and by that I mean, there's a lot of pro mom, pro dad, always this, always that, black and white thinking. Or is it multi-dimensional, like what we're talking about? Not just writing words on a paper, not just looking at well, you're my client, so you're the parent who's doing it right, and they're the bad guy, right? Like you and I talk about, okay, that's great. I've heard your story now about your co-parent. Let's talk about you, right? Because we can't control your co-parent. So let's talk about you, and where is your piece in there? Where
And
is your where are you keeping the fire going? Even if they're lighting the world on fire, what are you doing to keep that fire going? Right? Looking for someone, are they going to hold me accountable? Because if they're not, if I'm working with a coach who isn't holding me accountable, that's just called a friend, right?
yeah, and I'm just this is here's a red flag for everybody, I think. And please stop me if you think that I'm off on this. But so much, and I don't think that we do this. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we don't do this. But when there's this constant, this is what they're doing, this is what it looks like, this is how this goes, this is how they light you up, and this is the only narrative that is in their presentation and how they show up. I think that's a problem. And I think, just as I'm talking about that, that there's a link here with the AI. I think that there's a lot of that type of information that gets landed that way. This is what they do. This is what you have to do when they do this, and this is this back and forth and this kind of
Yes.
thing. And it's just a different iteration of that when they start to go into the AI and pull that out.
Yes. It's just like, what do my kids say? Like AI is trying to flatter you, right? It's always like, oh, that's the right way of thinking about it.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Thank
So
you
if I'm,
for thank you for bringing that up. That
that's
is
so
really
great.
good.
I mean, honestly, like I feel brilliant when I use AI. Like the guy, did you hear about the guy who thought he was he created some unique math problem like Einstein, and no, he was just getting flattered. But uh imagine if I prompted, or I'm imagining if I prompted AI, if my high conflict co-parenting relationship existed in the world of AI, and I prompted with everything going on in my family law case, everything my co-parent had done, said, all of it. I can imagine that AI's response would have empowered me to keep the fire going, right? Now, it wouldn't have phrased it that way, but it would have empowered me to take actions that didn't support my child's well-being. And that's, one of the things you and I talk about, I know we both do when we teach our class, is when you're looking at whether to go to court or not, it's not just, can I win? Or should I go to court? Or I'm in the right, they're in the wrong. There's you have to look at all the pieces. How is this going to affect your kids? And by the way, with what you're seeking the court to order, is it something that you can really even enforce, right? Or that they're going to enforce? Because if not, then you're just wasting a bunch of money. Now, that doesn't mean you never go to court and that there's nothing important to go to court over, of course. But I'm just imagining how very different my co-parenting family law case would have gone if I had AI and was prompting it.
With no knowledge of who you are and what the dynamic is.
Right. So I'm thinking specifically about, this was towards the end of the high conflict for me. And I reached out to you and we had a session about my son. And I remember you said, all he wants is the conflict to end, right? All he wants is the conflict to end, the fight to end. He's tired of hearing horrible things about you. He just wants it to end, even if it ends in a schedule that he doesn't want, right? And I remember that because it literally shifted everything. Because I thought I was advocating for what was best for my son and what he wanted. And although it was what he wanted, greater than that want was his want for his parents to be out of court so that he didn't have to hear about it in the other home. And that shifted everything, right? And if I had prompted ChatGPT about that, I can only imagine if Chat was reading all of the transcripts, I'm sure it would say, "Go get him, girl."
This is how you fight it. This is not how you
Right,
de-escalate.
right.
And the fight can be won in the de-escalation.
Yes.
And that's strategic. And chat can't give you the strategy. It's so important. You know, when I'm working with my clients in this, I'm digging in places that they're going, why are we talking about this? This has got nothing to do with the conflict. And I'm sitting there going, this has got everything to do with the conflict. And if we can parse this out and process these pieces out, your perspective is going to change. What's important to you is going to shift. And the answers are going to become more clear.
Right. And how many times have you had that conversation in a session where your client is resistant or even angry, and then they come back to the next one and say, "You know what? I was angry because it was true," right? And they wouldn't have gotten to that.
So, what's the tool that we want to use with AI? Where's its
Meaning,
value in this?
oh, you mean like outside of having fun?
Well, no, I'm talking within this arena, right? Yeah.
um,
I
yeah, you
mean, I
mean
know it's got
for,
its place.
well, I'll tell you one thing that it's good for is, they're going to court. They can create an outline of these are the talking points that I want, right? Help me organize my thoughts.
Great tool for organizing thought when it doesn't twist itself around itself.
Right. And if our clients then run the outline by us or their attorney to make sure that there's not a,
But that's efficiency, right? We want to use it for efficiency, but
that's
not for
exactly it.
strategy. We want to use it for, um, we can even run possibilities through it, but those possibilities have to be processed through. They're not a black and white piece. And you know, when if you're working with me and you're using AI, tell me that you're using AI. And let's talk about the value that's in what's coming out because there may be stuff that we haven't seen, that we haven't talked about, that we can process in that.
Right. Right. That's a good point.
But don't just grab it and run with it and think that you're doing a good job because again it's not aware it is not aware of the potentials of what happens on the other side when you do what it suggests that you do, whether that's a response. I think of the AI responses as being more of a superficial BlackRock. I mean, I've run some of these scenarios through when I'm writing stuff up, and I'm going, yeah, that's just blah, 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 with no meat to it. And it's too many words.
Way too many words.
And it's got some notion that this is um, nonviolent language that it's pulled from somewhere, and this is therapeutic language that you might use when no is sufficient.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is that it goes into a lot of defending them, explaining, right?
Right.
Things that are not in Biff.
I know that you may feel this way, but I'm not willing to go along with that. no
Right.
is enough,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
It's like this is not an interactive piece, and no is not gray rock. It's a boundary. It's just where we're at. So that's one of the things that tickles me when I start looking into AI and some of these responses that they're suggesting that happen, and the explanations that come out of it. It's like that's engagement. That is feeding the bear and leaving a trail to your front door. So guys, again, when you're in this world and you're playing with this, it's not a trustworthy tool.
Or what we're talking about. Yeah.
Right? It's just not a trustworthy tool.
I like what you
Doesn't
said,
mean
that
it's not a
it's an
tool to use.
efficiency tool. It's an
Right,
efficiency tool,
right.
not a processing tool.
So we're live with this right now, and if there's listeners out there, what I'd like to open up while we're winding this conversation down is that jump in the chat, ask us a question, and we'll pull some up and we'll talk about it a little bit more. And the chat's open, so if you're there and you want to bring a question in, please do. Um, what do you think, Michelle, about I want to come back to the discernment conversation, and I want to talk about a little bit about the fear or the reluctance or the resistance um, for people to step into really owning the process that they're in, and getting and sitting down and getting the help to move through this stuff in a healthy um, evolutionary type of a manner.
Well, I think the resistance comes from, it's a lot easier to point the finger than to look inward, right? And so I know, I'm just speaking from my own situation. It was easier for me to hold on to the story that it was all my co-parents' fault. And because then I'm right and I'm protecting our son, right? So if I look at my responsibility, then that means that, and I'm talking in the past, then that means that I did something wrong. I put my kid in the middle. I made a decision that put him in conflict. I have to look at myself if I'm not just pointing the finger.
So,
And really quick, it's a lot easier, I find, and Brittany and I talk about this often, the coach that works with me. Um, it's easier to do when the other co-parent is really over the top, really clear with their aggression, their conflict, right? And so it's easier to see the imbalance. And it's easier for clients on the other side to then say, see, look, the fire's burning over there, versus where, it's kind of a little bit more balanced. But it's like we talk about, it takes two people to engage in conflict and one to end the conflict. So if you have conflict, you have a peace.
so if I distill that down a little bit, what I think I hear you saying is there's a resistance to self reflection in it, but there's also a search for collusion.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to get that from outside sources, even from AI that we just talked about, even collusion. I'm looking for the book that matches me rather than the book that expands me. And the clients over the years that I've had that are truly successful have sat down and really shifted their strategies in terms of what's important. And again, I want to come back to, this isn't this moment in time that this is important. There's importance here, but it isn't the whole picture. And to be able to endure the discomfort of doing something differently that doesn't seem like it is congruent with what things should be. Yeah. Be careful out there, guys. I mean, it's icy.
Literally in most places in the world or in the
Right.
country and
Right.
figuratively.
You're going to slip and fall, and it's just not fun when you hit your butt on that hard asphalt that's got ice on it. Okay. Anything else that you want to bring in here, Michelle? I mean, I feel like we've kind of beat AI to death here a little bit today. I hope.
I think so too. Just wanted to mention, I think you have, I don't know if your 6 week class is full, but you're starting next week.
No, I started this week.
Oh, you started this week.
We're in motion.
Okay.
Um, I know that you are going to start again in
In about a
April.
month or so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think April. Yeah.
yeah, and my course will start probably end of April, early May as well. Those are 6 week courses. They're really in depth. Michelle and I teach the same content. She does a much better job than I do. We have
Not true.
we have different days that we do it on, but it's a valuable place for you to land, and it's affordable in its content, and it will bring you into relationship with what we're talking about here. It's really meant to wake you up, for you to have understanding, to take you out of judgment, to give you tools to work with your own nervous system. We open that can and we let it air out a little bit and give it some air. Also, how to parent in this arena. The tools are simple. I mean, they really truly are. They're simple. They take effort, but this takes effort. And when you change, again, I've been doing this for almost 2.5 decades, and I've seen people's lives change.
I think that every class we do. I mean, I'm still in one of my classes right now, and it's really cool to see the light bulb go off. And maybe, yeah, I relate to that because that's kind of where my light bulb went off.
Thanks for joining me here, Michelle. For
Thank you.
everybody, thanks for coming and continuing to follow us here. We are on all of the podcast channels, and you can watch this live on, or you can watch these live on YouTube, but they are also downloaded to YouTube every time we post. So take care, everybody. And again, Michelle, thank you for joining.